It's been moved by Commissioner Garza, supported by Commissioner Colleen. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone wish to abstain? Motion passes. Next item.
D, unfinished business. There is none listed.
Okay, next item.
Moving to item 1, under new business, discussion with the representatives from the Department of Management and Budget on budget adjustment number 2024-35302 in compliance with Public Act 2 of 1968.
I'm going to turn it over to our Auditor General, Marcy Cora.
Marcy Cora, Auditor General. And if you can introduce yourself.
Oh,
Vandy,
make sure your microphone's on.
Vandy OT's Deputy Auditors General.
And if I have guests, if they could introduce themselves.
Yogesh Kisani, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Management Budget. Good morning.
Good morning, Greg McIntyre, Deputy Budget Director, Management and Budget.
Just a little history on this. At the Ways and Means and Full Board meeting that was held on February 20th, there was discussion regarding budget adjustment 2024-35302. And the chair of Ways and Means asked me at that time if I could provide a memo regarding the budget adjustment, which I prepared and sent out on Friday. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to review it, but I'll kind of go through it a little bit.
Okay.
Public Act 2 of 1968, Section 17(1) states that the legislative body of the local unit shall amend the General Appropriations Act as soon as it becomes apparent that a deviation from the original General Appropriation Act is necessary and the amount of deviation can be determined. We obtained a copy of the Uniform Budget Manual that was prepared for the Department of Treasury from August 2001, and it clearly states that the Budget Act requires budget amendments before any expenditure exceeds the budget. It states that there is no authority to amend the budget after year end. Appropriations made after a contract is entered into or funds spent is a violation of the Act. In fiscal year ending September 30th audit by Plant Moran, there was a finding. There was a material weakness and a material noncompliance with laws and regulation. The finding was related the county incurred costs before the end of the year, but did not amend the budget until after. This was the finding that came to the commission late January 2024. The recent budget adjustment came to the commission February 20th was of the same nature, and it's also going to result in the finding for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024 audit. This budget adjustment was over 4.5 months after the end of the fiscal year, which is a violation of the Public Act. So we thought we needed to have a discussion so we could bring the budget division along with management, budget, financial reporting, so they can explain what processes they're going to have in place to correct these in the future so that we don't have the untimeliness of the budget adjustments. But I think just a little history, Yogesh and I have been talking on this for some time. Years ago, there used to be quarterly budget projections that would come to the commission. I think this allowed the departments and other elected officials to stay ahead of the game and monitor their budgets along with their actual expenditures more timely. While it all rolls up to the Department of Management and Budget, they can't do their function until the departments and elected officials are posting their transactions, making sure their budgets are accurate, making sure they're not going over budget. Then it comes to the department for the budget amendments. So I'll let Yogesh talk a little bit about it.
Okay, before we go to Yogesh, I just want to kind of summarize. So we've had 2 years where we've had budget adjustments significantly after year end.
Mm-hmm.
And those are in violation of the Public Act that says there's no authority to amend the budget after the year end.
Correct.
That's correct. Okay. And so today we're discussing kind of why that happened and what we're going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Correct.
This year. Okay. Yogesh.
Good morning, Commissioners. And thank you, Auditor General. My name is Yogesh Kisani, again, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Management Budget. So I'm trying to address the root cause of this for year or two. And what is a special circumstances in this year? and I'll outline the reason. So as we know, we start the audit normally after 2 months, around November. And we have a policy in government, what we call it modified accrual. So we have to take a collection of property tax for October and November. That's called a 60 days collections. And normally, I think we get almost $50-60 million in October and November, right? That's a subsequent to an year end. And by the time we get those transactions in general ledger, that's like around 10th of December, because treasurer has to post all those transactions, really. So by the time we get those entries, it's the middle of December, then most of the grants that we have a policy called a 90 days recognition. So as long as we get the money before December 31st, we can still recognize as of 9/30. And this is an important because some of the grants, as you know, state of Michigan changed some system. And so like a child care grant from HHVS, I mean, we are still waiting like 22nd December, 29th December and say, hey, are we going to get a payment for August? Are we going to get a payment for September, even those billings? And before that, they were allowed us to bill consecutively that month. But I think a year or 2 years before, state of Michigan changed that unless they process April, you can't submit the month of May. Then once they process the month of May, then only you have to submit the invoices. And this is, I can have somebody from, HSVS talk about that. I don't have it right now, but so those are the processes changed. So by the time 3 months goes, right, we don't have an exact picture really. I mean, we can estimate very well and say, okay, property tax, $50-60 million, we are going to get in October and November. So those are circumstances like an year to year, so to speak. Now, let me circle back to this year. As you know, we went live with our HCM, Human Capital Management, our HR system, Oracle, that we probably have been trying for the last 3-4 years. So that was great news. We went live in the middle of the year, July 1st. So the last quarter was in the new system, 3 quarters were in old system. And again, Oracle cloud-based system, very modern system, and we're trying to run back our general ledger transaction back to JD Edwards. So we knew those challenges, and we worked hard. We had enough resources lined up, everything were working well. And then at the top of that, we hit with the cyber attack. This is where things kind of falling apart because now you lost the files. We were trying to recover the files, data files. And it's not only M&P or financial reporting or few elected officers, mainly treasurer's office, that, they do most of the audit schedules based on those files. Some of them, many of them, they're lost. So we were trying to recover those files to get the historical data. So again, how those things were being kind of, postponed, we don't get data. So unless there's a data in a general ledger, we can come up with and say, hey, this grant funding business unit is going to go deficit or not deficit. So those are the reasons outlined in this year's, particularly system. But again, we had a control on that. And anytime, based on my experience of 2 system implementation or 3, normally it takes 6 to 8 months to stabilize the system. So that's what we have been working hard to that. And now we are current in like payroll posting and everything, we are current. But it took us a time even to get the last quarter of a payroll data in. So obviously, we cannot know much more budget versus actually at that point. So that's particularly for this year reason. It's not going to happen next year because now system is going to be, I would say, mature system, almost entire 1 year data is going to be in the Oracle. And we are obviously trying to go live with our financial system on October 1. Okay. So that was the reason the way our policy works with the property taxes, grant recognition, and third one I would mention is a flow of data from other offices and other departments. I wish I can have all the data by November end so we can try to meet even charter deadline. Right, but those data flow normally is very slow. So, I mean, I had to stop at some point and say, Am I still keep on moving numbers? Or I have to stop the numbers so auditors can audit this? So those are the things, again. And I would say next year, there would not be issue with the system. Hopefully, there would not be any issue with the cyber attack. So those things are gone. I guess the data flow, then we have to work on that and say, how can we, get a better data flow on a timely manner from other department, other offices too.
Marcy.
And I think that's what's timely too on the flow of data. If departments and elected officials are closing their books monthly and making sure their postings are timely, it would help with the flow of data to M&B. I think that's where the problem is. There's a delay in posting by departments and elected officials.
Yeah. So how do we make sure that that's being done?
I don't know if Yogi, if he has any suggestions, but also, I think it was prior to COVID, and Felicia just showed me something. There used to be quarterly reporting to the commission,
Mhm.
and I haven't seen that, I don't think, since prior to COVID. Maybe Mary. Yeah, there hasn't been quarterly reporting to the commission in some time, and maybe we need to go back to that where they had compared their budget to actuals and
Okay.
reported to the commission.
Is that something that is in our rules or, I'm sorry? In our charter? Oh, okay, so it is required, but we haven't kind of been following up with that. Is that,
Through the chair, when John Wallace came on board, we had a Zoom meeting with him and we told him what reports we've needed.
Mhm.
So that was one of the reports that we've asked for, but we've not received any.
okay. Should, do those reports go to Ways and Means?
Through the chair, yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. Go on, Marcy, sorry.
So that would be a start, but I think what's important with those quarterly reports, that the quarterly reports are timely too.
Okay.
There was a time, I think quarterly reports were coming 6 months after the quarter.
Okay.
Commissioners, I'll make sure that I will communicate to the CFO in our offices. So.
Could I go back to something you mentioned about the grants and the 90-day recognition? I don't really understand that. Can you expand upon that a little bit more?
Sure. So in our financial statement, right, we say that our significant accounting policy kind of says, okay, as long as we get whatever we have billed for the month of, I would say July, August, September, as long as we get those money before December, we can still recognize the revenue as of 9/30. If we don't get it, then we have to defer the revenue. That means we just cannot recognize the revenue as of 9/30.
Okay.
It's clear?
Yeah. So Marcy.
So then I think we're saying with the 90-day policy, as long as the revenue is earned by September 30th, you have 90 days after September 30th to actually receive it.
Okay. So is that something that could possibly cause a budget adjustment at the end of fiscal year?
I would say, some of the grants maybe because some of the bigger grants like a state and everything, again, everybody's monitoring very well to make sure. But again, if state system is not working, system is slow, at that point, we just have to make sure that are we going to run into a deficit or not, right? So I would say 90 days grant policy is well, because at least we don't have to subsidize some of the grant business unit from a general fund side, right? As long as we receive it. But again, everybody has to be very proactive in billing to their grants too.
Marcy.
Because to add to that, I would think the department or business unit that is submitting for the grant, they should have a pretty good idea of how much that grant revenue should be that they're receiving if they're staying on top of what their submissions are.
Right. So when they submit, right, most of the grants on a reimbursement basis, so then they should book this as a revenue. But if conditions right now, what's going on federal government too, if you don't get reimbursement in a timely fashion at that point. From an auditing standards, right? From this is different from an auditing standards. If you don't get it within 90 days, then we have to defer the revenue. That might put your business unit into a deficit.
Are there any reports that should be or are submitted to Ways and Means about grants that haven't been recognized yet? Or would that help in this situation at all?
I think just Auditor General mentioned maybe the quarterly projection. I think quarterly budget versus actual and projection might help. I think because that's what that gives you a true picture, right? If I have a $1 million budgeted, if I haven't collected $100,000, then obviously, that triggers the question.
Mhm.
And I think too, what's important is the accurate and timely postings. I think sometimes that's not happening.
Right. I think.
Yeah.
So again, it's, I'm sitting at the tail end financial reporting, right? We look at this data, but if data is not there, that's then sometimes, it makes an issue. And, we try to contact everybody and just make sure, billing is there. Everybody sometimes have their own competing priorities. Each and every offices have their own functions. Sometimes it's most important than this one, so.
Mhm. Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Kleen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Auditor General, with you cited the Public Act, I assume that's a Michigan act. Does that act speak at all to the 90 days of recognizing revenue that goes beyond the end of the fiscal year? Does it speak to that at all in terms of, or is it just absolutely under the law, no budget adjustments after the close of the year?
The Uniform Budget Manual says no budget adjustments after the close of the year. The 98-day policy is a county policy.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, anticipating what your revenue is going to be and putting the accrual in for that revenue is what's important. But then as Joey says, if you recognize the revenue as accrual that you're going to receive, say, $5 million and you're past 90 days and it can't be recognized, and that's when you run into problems. So if we need to make sure that we're submitting our revenue reimbursements to whatever the granting agency timely so that we receive it timely.
And with the quarterly reports, the charter speaks to common ways and means. About 10 years ago, in conjunction with those, the commission passed a budget deficit ordinance to, when those quarterly reports come around, that deficits get corrected. This is the bad old days of 07, 08. And we had a lot of funds running deficits. And the point of that ordinance was to make sure that we, on that quarterly basis, address the deficits as we go through the year. To your knowledge, Madam Auditor General, is that ordinance being applied?
Not that I'm aware of. Mary may be able to add more to it from fiscal side, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I have the distinct feeling it's kind of been forgotten about. What are the chances? I know what you're facing upstairs, right? We don't have enough people. How many people in MMB these days?
Sorry, Craig, do you know?
I'm not for sure.
We have to count it, but I think overall MNB, if I'm not forgetting, I think overall in MNB, not the financial reporting or budget.
Right.
Must be around 90 and above. I just have to check that number.
And how many would we have seen a decade ago or so? How many positions have you lost?
Through some transitions, like we all know after 2015, we have lost most of them, or I would say institutional knowledge too. And then we started hiring that, but commissioners, I don't have a number yet, but I can certainly provide those
Well,
numbers.
that institutional knowledge is crucial.
Mhm.
Do you have the ability with the staff that you have to produce quarterly budget reports?
Well, I can assure you that we should be able to give you a quarterly report. I just need to talk with budget division about that. But I think we are planning to get that out now, because I think we have hired some of the more resources on that side, actually. So we should be able to give you that.
Yeah, because I think those, I really appreciate our independent Auditor General for raising this. This is an important function of government, whether they're independent inspector generals or auditor generals. These are the eyeballs of the citizens on what's going on in our government. So I really appreciate the Auditor General bringing this to our attention. Does the Auditor General, what do you think? What do you think guardrails? Do we have the guardrails to prevent this and to comply with the charter
I think the quarterly
and the
report,
law?
the quarterly reports will be helpful, but again, the quarterly reports are only going to be as useful as the information that's in the quarterly report. So if we're still not having timely posting, the quarterly reports are not going to provide the information that's needed. So I think there needs to be somehow something out to the departments and elected officials that more timely recording of transactions.
And with that, would that be sufficient? The timeliness is the real big issue here.
Yeah, if again, commissioners, yes, if data is there, then, and as you know, right now we are in old systems, but obviously when we get into an Oracle, which has a more analytics, we will be able to build even dashboard, right? So obviously there'll be in a bright future, definitely. If data is in, and I think we are going to avoid a lot of manual work that we have now on our side too, journal entry, or I'm sure other offices too. But having this, new systems and online visibility that everybody can do a lot of things on there, I'm sure there will be a lot less manual work, and we might be able to produce some much better analytics, so to speak. That's my hope.
Yeah, and I will say with the new system, two things about that. One is the training of people to use a system they have not used before, and that would be across the county, touching all departments, correct? All your
That's correct.
MMB folks in all of the different departments. And I agree with you on the hope, but installing this new system has had its starts and stops, shall we say. So from my chair, where I sit, I'm like, yeah, okay, October 1st. So that may or may not happen. We hope it does, but it may or not be, as we go through testing and everything. So we may have this issue.
So Commissioner Killeen, at this point, we are targeting October 1.
Yeah,
because
I
we
understand
want to
that.
make sure that we have a clear cutoff of fiscal year.
And I hope you're successful in that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We need blessings from everywhere.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think to add that too, and I think Yogesh can add on to this one, I think the good chargeback model is what's important. So the chargebacks are accurate and reflected into each business unit monthly. So that it helps the business unit stay on top of what their actual costs are, including chargebacks. And as soon as a fund sees that it's going into deficit, that's when a budget adjustment needs to take place, whether it's transferred to the general fund or whatever it is, to eliminate that deficit before we come to year end.
And that's what the ordinance did, or attempted to do.
That is correct. So with this system implementation, again, I would qualify that it's not going to fix all of them, right? Our chargeback model is, again, 15, 20 years old that we need to revisit. Economy has changed, everything has changed in 20 years, right? So we just need to revisit that chargeback model, and that's what our plan is. With this new system, there's a lot of allocations, a lot of functionalities are there that we're trying to explore and say, how can we use this system much better, efficient way then do a manual chargeback. So again, those things are there. And Commissioner, let me address about training. I think we have a change management as part of our Oracle team that was very active, and obviously a lot of trainings, train the trainers, and a lot of other training strategies are going to be there. So we'll make sure each and every person is not training, but retraining and constant training is going on.
Any other commissioner questions, discussion? Okay,
I
Marcy?
had just one last comment regarding Yogesh. I've been working with Yogesh now for, 10, 15, 20 years. I think Yogesh has a good hand on everything in the county, whether it's the treasurer's office, whether it's M&B. And I think he's a great asset to the M&B. I just wanted to say that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Auditor General, and thank you very much, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Right. I think that concludes our discussion on item number 1. So let's move on, Madam Clerk.
F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I don't have any. Marcy, did you have any other? matters? Okay. Next item, is
G, public comments.
there anyone here who wishes to make a public comment? Committee on Audit? Is there anyone on the phone or on Zoom? Any emails?
No emails were received.
Anyone here to make a public comment? If you're in person or on Zoom or on the phone, you can unmute yourself. Last call for public comments. Hearing none. Next item.
Adjournment.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair.
Okay, there's a motion and